So this is Trey Smith of God in a Nutshell, and I want to thank you for tuning in this Friday night at here on YouTube or Facebook or X or wherever you may be watching from. And I'm here tonight with Andrew Mullinex. We're also going to be going through with Dave Summerall some of the issues that are occurring with the J6 prisoners and their release. I actually have an interview tomorrow coming up with one of the J6ers named Brian Smith, who was in prison for 10 months and is going to go through some of his experiences in that. Let me just begin in with reading off to you a list this evening of everything that Donald Trump has done in less than a week of being president. So in the first week of Donald Trump being the 47th president of the United States, the immigration, one of the first executive orders designated Mexican drug cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. He withdrew the United States from the Paris Climate Agreement, leaving the World Health Organization. This is quite a bit to happen in the first week of in fact, this is historic. Many very competent people that I was talking to were thinking about when Trump going in, there's no way that he's accomplishing the list of things that he's put forth. Most of them are going to take months to fight. And I think in the past years, what's really happened is a lot of the apparatus that was in place 8 years ago, 4 years ago, had he become president in 2020, many believe that he did act as commander in chief during those years. But whatever you may believe on the other side of the screen, look how easy it is to rip the apparatus out of each one of these. They took TikTok off. It looks like TikTok is coming back on. Here's a real big one: gender and biological sex. This happened within not days, but within hours of Donald Trump becoming the 47th president of the United States. And this is just a short list of these that are on the screen in front of me. And of course, one of the large ones deals with January 6th. I'm here tonight with Andrew Mullinex. And Andrew, also, we renamed the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. All of these things are things that happened within the first week of Donald Trump becoming president of the United States. Andrew, what are your thoughts on what on this evening?
It's been a pretty wild week, hasn't it, Trey?
Yeah, yes, it has. So I wanted to go over tonight some of the prophecies that Kim Clement had, some of the things. So on the last live stream that we did, we went over some of the different prophecies that Kim had given about things that have happened and things that are yet to come. And he had talked about this year of 2027 being an incredible year that was on the horizon, that people would say, if you could only see this year of 2027 and what that would look like, that they would be absolutely amazed. And on the road there, he had a lot of war parts that dealt with Russia. They dealt with Saudi Arabia, who just made a $600 billion up to $1 trillion contribution to the United States. And this was personally done by Mohammed bin Salman. And sorry, my voice is going out a little bit tonight. On Thursday evening, came and gave a commitment of $600 billion up to $1 trillion, as I understand it. Saudi Arabia and Iran play a great deal into these prophecies. In parts where the cats and dogs are going to fight. But I kind of did want to go straight into you, Andrew, and because throughout the day today, you've had some things that you wanted to go to about these first days of Donald Trump's election.
So his inauguration night was pretty wild. I mean, when have you ever seen somebody so prepared, so ready to just take action from the get-go? I mean, he was signing executive orders during the inaugural parade in the convention center there. And one of the first ones he signed was he took us out of the Paris Climate Accords, which I think if you are a tinfoil hat wearing person like myself, we're going to start seeing a whole lot less things in the skies that we're used to seeing over the last 4 years. So that's a pretty big one. I think it's going to it's going to save a ton of money, and there's things on the horizon as far as money is concerned that I believe we're going to see coming up pretty quick. And there's a lot of hints towards abolishing the IRS altogether, getting rid of the income tax. And I'm not even seeing hints of replacing that with anything else at this point in time. So we may be looking at a future of import export and tariffs only, and a really streamlined federal government, which is what our founders 100% intended to happen. And in fact, we functioned on tariffs for the first 100 years of our nation's history alone. And Trump's right; we were flourishing just using tariffs alone. So taking us out of the Paris Climate Accords is a money-saving effort right there. He rescinded all of Biden's executive orders right from the gate. One of the first ones he signed was rescinding all the harmful Biden executive orders that have kept us sort of subjugated for the last 4 years. So that's huge. I mean, he came in incredibly strong, like David fighting Goliath, and he did it to their faces, and that's pretty huge. I mean, I want to talk about what was going on at the World Economic Forum in Davos. I would love to talk about the J6 stuff and what's going on with that, because that's huge too. I mean, Trump has come in like a wrecking ball, and I think we can discuss that and go through that tonight.
Why do you feel? Why do you feel it is? It feels like they kind of shut down. Like here they were in everyone's face, and then suddenly it just sort of chopped. And you had a lot of thoughts on that,
Yeah.
particularly when we were out. So in November, back when you and I went and we recorded a number of different prophets, and you did an excellent job film recording out there, Andrew. And some of those were about John F. Kennedy, which the JFK files, and following this live stream, we're actually going to be uploading portions of some of the unseen parts of those prophecies that turn out to be incredibly relevant to these moments. But one of the speculations that you and I even talked about while we were out there in San Antonio is that it seemed like a script had been flipped.
Oh yeah.
That suddenly whatever game plan was going had been shut down or stopped. And even Elon Musk has defined this as a literal fork in the road of civilization.
So can I get conspiratorial and align that with what the prophet says?
Let's do it. Let's do
Okay,
it.
so
And for the viewers, the next time you watch, the video camera on my end will look a lot better. But we do want to go ahead on that, Andrew.
You're good, bro.
Yes.
So I am not shy about it, never have been shy about it, and never will be shy about it. I have been following what the Q drops were saying since 2017. And a lot of what we're seeing coming from people like Kim Clement and some of the other prophets, the modern prophets, very much aligns with the things that were dropping on 8chan and 4chan initially, with the operation that we call Q. Now, a lot of people will say that's a psychological operation. Yes, I 100% agree. It's a psychological operation, but who is the operation against? I don't think it was against us. I think it was a counter operation against what Trump calls the deep state, which is more than just it's more than just a bureaucratic situation in Washington, D.C. The deep state, I think, is a number of really old and powerful names across the world. And so following that since 2017, and then really having a reawakening in 2020 when they hit us with the pandemic, I think a lot of us started digging into things that we wouldn't normally dig into because we were home. We were working from home. We had our kids at home. We were teaching our own children. We went through a phase, and I think America and other nations around the world are going through a global or a worldwide great awakening. I think it ties into this operation that I personally believe goes all the way back to John Kennedy. I think it goes back to where Kennedy was exposing the deep state apparatus. Eisenhower before him was exposing the military industrial complex. And so when Kennedy made his speech where he was exposing secret societies and organizations within our government, it wasn't long after that that they took him out. So knowing that there's a lot of things that are in proximity to each other that makes sense when you look at everything from a really wide lens, you can kind of piece it together like a puzzle. You've got the prophetic stuff that's going on with Kim, how
Yeah.
that aligns with the QOP, which is all about taking down the evil that has run not only this country but countries around the world. I think Trump's slogan "America First" wasn't just about doing things first for America. It was literally if America falls, the whole world falls to the globalist. The whole world falls to this handful of names that have a lot of power in places all around the world. So America first. We had to find our foundation again and be reminded of who we are. And I think we needed a leader, and Kim talked about that. His new David, God's new David. I believe 100% that Trump has come in as the new David to defeat the giant being the worldwide establishment, deep state, whatever you want to call it. And we've been getting nuggets of information for the last 8 years on where we're heading now. And I think we're seeing, one of the Q drops says future proves past. We're starting to see come to fruition the things that we were given nuggets of information about 8 years ago. And I think Trump has come in 100% ready to roll. And it's almost like we needed to see these last 4 years. Another one of the Q drops said we were watching a movie, or a series of movies. Actually, it was funny that Trump did his victory parade, his victory rally on National Popcorn Day, because that aligns directly with what the Q stuff was saying. And I think we're going to see a lot of people go down very quickly. I mean, look, you got Catherine Herridge in Guantanamo Bay reporting right now. I mean, we're literally seeing all
Many
these.
of the things that look like what were in those posts.
Yeah. Follow the pin. That was a Q drop.
Let
The
me
pin is Catherine Herridge.
really
Yeah.
the same lady that just went to Guantanamo Bay.
Yes.
Okay, all
I'm
right.
telling
Well,
you,
then
all of
you're
this is wild, bro.
see what's actually interesting about that is that one of these older videos that I did, that I actually gave it that title because a lot of people were really into this Q movement, and I didn't really focus on it. And this was probably following that, about the time that I started getting to know you, Andrew. But I was glad that I only had looked at the prophecy angle of it, because it would have really tainted me.
Yeah.
And a lot of these people, they were censored off of YouTube. They were censored off. And by the way, I take really no position on the Q stuff. In fact, many of these men are far more competent than I will probably ever be. When I would talk to LT of the And We Know show, or other people, I mean, they could just list off and rattle off, and yourself also, Andrew, things about those posts. But I was finding that was very strange. I was putting together a video that was actually had that title. And in that video, I just went through, because I understood the theme of it. I understood the theme of it, that you had good people in your government, which I know that to be true.
Yeah.
That I mean, we all know that to be true. But that these people wanted to weed out the evil in your government, and this aligned with these prophecies, at least the concept of it. And what's funny is I ran across this Anderson Cooper interview where he's interviewing the guys from the Daily Beast. And of course, Anderson Cooper comes from Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
Vanderbilt is Gloria Vanderbilt. And, they say idle minds are the devil's playground. And, the Vanderbilts are railroad money. And
Yep.
Vanderbilt was a friend of Andrew Jackson. That's where at least some of the success came from for building these railroads. But he was also very industrious. I mean, this was an enormous part of your industrial revolution. And then you would get Gloria, and she has the castles, and Lord only knows what goes on in the Mothers of Darkness castles, probably worse than we can imagine. Anderson is really birthed into this, if you will.
Yeah.
Then on the other end but here's where I was going with that, is that of news reporters over at CNN, in this instance, for example, Anderson would do just show after show, and you could never really, Anderson is like a news reporter you pull out of a box. He's got no emotion. He's got, he can interview Greta Thunberg and keep a straight face. And at times I even laughed at this. But on this Daily Beast show, they were asking him about this Q thing. And I noticed that he was looking for a real response from these guys at the Daily Beast. And of course, they're there just on the show to be like a sounding board. That's really their only purpose. He tells them something isn't real. They laugh back and say, of course, you're correct. It's not. There's no evidence. But in this situation, Anderson was actually looking for somebody to tell him something. And I think, and he kind of shook out of it. But I think he realized in that moment that the people there have nothing to give him. But the only other thing that I noticed is he looked afraid. And it really struck me. And that was the first time I ever took any of that stuff as serious. It wasn't anything to do with any of one of the posts. I hadn't read any of them.
A lot of people
but it was
look really afraid right now. I mean, did you see George W. Bush at the inauguration? I mean, that was it's reminiscent of back when Senior's funeral was happening, and not everybody, because Jimmy Carter didn't get one, but some of the major players were receiving white envelopes in their funeral programs, and their faces were really, especially Jeb's face. Jeb's face was the best of all.
It was priceless. Yeah,
it was priceless. But at the inauguration, George W., he had he was looking around like, who's coming to get me right now? I just, I think we're on the verge of seeing a bit of relief here. I think God has granted us some relief.
Michelle didn't show. Yeah. So in Kim's prophecies, it seemed to go from this internal apparatus to the war parts. And he said the earth was standing waiting to shake. The nations of the earth stand waiting. And I keep thinking that that's the time frame that we're in. Yeah. And that China will rise its head up against this land. It'll be betrayed by Russia, who, whether our friend or not, they don't attack us, because in those prophecies, it says that Putin's bite or Russia's bite will be hard, but it will not be with the United States.
Yeah.
And then while these cats and dogs, and I have a feeling that that's what Saudi Arabia, probably what they did there was very wise, because you call it, and other people call it the
capitulation tour. Yeah.
Capitulation tour. But in this instance, they could be in real trouble out there, because neither China or Russia are Islamic. And if the two Islamic nations have made all of these deals against the United States for the past 4 years, and this includes Saudi Arabia, I don't know what they knew or didn't know, but I doubt Trump told them everything, then this would be a good time to come back and say, if something goes wrong, like Klaus Schwab told them, prepare for a black swan event. And by the way, that goes back to Gloria Vanderbilt. That was one of her favorite branding labels, was the black swan, which of course means an unexpected or unforeseen horrifying event. But the two Islamic countries, Saudi Arabia or Arabia, is still there in in Revelation. I'm not sure what happens to Iran, and Iran is sort of a contrivance. as it is. Iran is actually ancient Persia. It's one of the countries out there, and this is worthy of note. So when you take Syria, well, that goes back to an ancient country. You take Egypt, that goes back to an ancient country or province. You take Arabia or Saudi Arabia. Of course, it was just called Arabia at that time, but still Arabia. This goes back to an ancient province. Iran isn't any of these. It's ancient Persia.
Yeah.
So whoever drew those lines wasn't thinking about Iran. And the same thing I would note with Yemen, which should be good news for Saudi Arabia. But I took heavy note of that when he came in, because when it talks about the cats and dogs fighting, it's talking about the Islamic nations are going to go at it in the midst of this,
Yeah.
when everything begins to collapse inward. What are your thoughts, Andrew?
Well, it might be that the Islamic nations go after each other. And I want to go back to the capitulation tour for this one, because you remember when Trump went to the Saudis and he came out doing the sword dance.
Mhm.
There's a link there. He did another sword dance during the Commander in Chief ball in DC on Monday, and and there's also links to uh, I think that in that capitulation we were seeing that at least Saudi Arabia, being the head of the Islamic states there, that Saudi Arabia is the kingdom, right? It's the one that
Mhm.
sort of controls all the Islamic states around it. And Mohammed bin Salman is the crown prince of Saudi Arabia. And we remember what happened with him and how we believe that Trump may have saved him from assassination. And then he went on the capitulation tour in favor of
Mhm.
Trump. So I think you've got a number of pieces that are playing together. And really the big picture here, in my mind, the big picture is that, remember, Trump's motto has always been America first. And in fact, if you go back to the Q stuff, it says it's saving Israel for last. And I think it doesn't mean the Jewish people. I think it means the state of Israel and the lineage of that state. Because I personally don't believe that the modern day Israel is what we could call Hebrew Israelites. That's just my personal belief. So I think you've got, remember the Balfour Declaration, who was involved with
Mhm.
that. And so you've got a number of things in this hot seat of the East. America's
Mhm.
getting taken care of right now, and then you've got to then you've got to take care of the deep state or the globalism or the one world government or whatever you want to call it on the eastern side of the world. All of that has to be taken care of. And really, the only way you take care of all of that is that you have to have a strong America. This is why I believe Trump's motto has always been America first. So I think he's putting us in position not only here, but also he's already made alignments with some of these other people to at least take us away from this globalist worldview of one world government, World Economic Forum, WHO, a small group of people controlling the masses. And if you look at Putin, he's very nationalist. He's very all about Russia. If you look at Trump, he's very nationalist. He's all about America. If you look at Xi, he's very nationalist and all about China. Um, I think you're going to see alignments come together for a purpose here in the very near future.
I agree. Yeah.
And that purpose, I think it is ultimately it is about a reprieve from the direction that we were heading. So,
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, Trump's already showing. He's already showing us what he's going to do. I mean, he was in Davos
Mhm.
yesterday at the World Economic Forum, and he was giving them a big old screw you right to their faces. Right, I mean, right to the ones that seek to control us and subjugate us, he went to their faces and said, America's not going to be part of this at all. And I think that's huge. It's huge. Like, who else? Who else? What other leader have we ever had that would do that? So I could totally see that alignment with Kim's prophecy of Trump being the David.
It's falling apart out from under them,
Yeah.
and I believe it already has. And that's why. So if you remember on election night, in the middle of the night, we were watching the election, and there were all sorts of funny things happening in the election. The same type of things that happened back in 2020, and somehow all of that changed, as if it just got shut down right during the election, and then suddenly you're getting state after state winning, and then pretty early in the evening, he's actually taken the win, and we were told there are these force. The internal portions of it. There are three parts of the internal portions of it that I still believe that are coming. And when I read these parts where it says that the nations of the earth stand waiting, that there's this kind of calm before the storm. So there are three fundamental things. One is terrorism that occurs.
Right.
So as you have all these deportations that are occurring, you've got terrorist cells that have come over that are waiting in play, and they can't wait forever.
Yeah.
And the aggressive nature of getting these people out is shocking even to me. When I was looking at the photos of these, and these aren't migrants, they're illegals, they're actually cartel members.
Yeah.
And to identify the cartels as terrorist organizations, what were you thinking on that?
That's huge. It is huge. Like I spent a year on the border watching how the cartels operate, and you got to understand, one, this is a big deal. We have Marines at the border right now. They have sent tanks. They have sent equipment. They have sent Marines. We're not just talking National Guard here. He's doing something that no president has ever done before. He's putting Marines at the border. They're going to cut the head off the snake of the cartel. But what I also believe 100% is that you got to go back to who created that beast, who created the cartel beast, who allowed that to happen.
CIA, some people that shot JFK.
You go back to Operation Gladio. That was all about involving the Italian mafia and distributing drugs. The CIA was making tons of money off of that. That's how they built their mercenary army. And then they've been using cartels to do the same thing. So we're not just cutting off the head of the snake that is centralized in Mexico and Central America and South America. It's cutting off the armed terrorist organization that is directly linked to how the CIA runs its operations. So I think that's another big deal. They confirmed John Ratcliffe yesterday.
Right. And that's the new CIA director.
Remember, Trump went to the CIA office there in DC, and he said he looked up at the pillars in the building. He said he's gonna make new pillars for the CIA. So I think we're seeing that system being collapsed right in front of us in the first 5 days of his presidency. He is not playing around. And I think they know they're caught in a corner and they've only got a few options left. And they're going to play those options out. They'll play those options out. It's a game of chess. You got to play all the way to the end. And I think we're going to see some dramatic times in that process, but I think it's going to be very controlled. And he's already showing that he's got a lot of this under control already, just by what he's already
the CIA done. It's interesting you go there, and it's interesting, and following this, some of that footage from the not the CIA files that Trump is putting out, but that was one of the John F. Kennedy just encircles all of this, and was part of the prophecies from this man in South Africa. And there's a little South Africa, even if we go a little over time here. One of the things that happened in the last day or last couple of days, my wife is from South Africa. Donna, Kim Clement was from South Africa. the pastor that gave this prophecy, he started in with the John F. Kennedy. And of course, he knew who John F. Kennedy was. But you've got to understand, when you're over there in South Africa, now they know a little of American history. They know about California. Mainly, they know about California and New York. They'll know some of the presidents, but they're not going to know, like you or I watching this video, at least most people won't, that he died in Dallas, Texas. They may know that he got shot. They may know, but they're not going to know that. But the Lord was giving him these specific visions about this president, John F. Kennedy, that was shot in Dallas, Texas. And that these prophecies were to be given directly following the election of the 47th president, or Donald Trump. So that's a presumed part of the prophecy. This man from South Africa, like Elon Musk is from South Africa, he's a wild card. But that he was to give these prophecies at these locations. And with John F. Kennedy, the my thought on that for the entire they just kept killing people that were trying to build things, and they were killing people that were friends of. So in this case, I've got right here this book that I've used. This has been a great book. I haven't actually read the book, but when they don't get their way, they kill people. And this goes all the way back, and the CIA has been doing this for a lot of years. And so the groups of people, when you talk about this righteous set of people behind the scenes, that you've got these collections of people that independently were terrified to open their mouths over time. And in John F. Kennedy's case, it got him shot in the head on that street corner. And there's something about that bullet through the head that has caused a shaking to the point that's, for whatever case, Donald Trump wants them to know that bullet is costing them today.
Yeah. And I think there's a, so how do you win this war? And it's not just through executive order. I think we're going to have to see a collapse of our fiat currency. The Fed's got to go. Like that, I think that's the whole reason why we're seeing the hint at abolishing the IRS, because the Fed has to go. And when the Fed goes, when the central banks goes, I mean, that goes back to Andrew Jackson as well. Remember, he got rid of the central banks. Yeah, yes. He got rid of the central banks. In his point,
there wasn't actually a collapse for that, though. I mean, the collapse. So there are different models for that. But go ahead, Andrew.
But I don't think so. Everybody's afraid of the word collapse. I'm saying a collapse of the fiat currency. Now, remember, Trump just put out an executive order about not having CBDCs come in, right?
Mm-hmm.
So no central bank digital currencies. At the same time, he's putting into place an asset-based economy and backing those assets with things like Bitcoin and XRP. So a blockchain technology. I think in order for us really to win this battle, that you've got to take the money changers out of the equation, and that's what the Fed is. They're the money changers. So I see that in the near future. Actually, I believe that's coming, and I think we're heading down that path pretty quickly. I mean, with the first 5 days, he's already signing these executive orders. Speaking of executive orders, can we talk about the J6 stuff for just a bit?
Let's go. Yes, let's go directly into that.
I'd like to bring, so, I've been heavily involved in the J6 stuff, and with a group of people, David Summerall of StopHate.com, Trennis Evans of Condemned USA. We did a documentary, Bloody Hill, on the J6 situation back in 2022. We're working on another one right now. It's called Pardon Us. And it's more than just about the pardons, but I want to bring on sort of one of the J6 experts. His name's David Summerall. You know him personally. and let him talk about what Trump's done, what we're still waiting on, and how the swamp is responding to it. You good with me bringing him on?
Yes, let's bring Dave in.
David,
Can you hear me now?
I can hear
Can you
you.
hear me?
We can hear you some, David.
Okay. You can hear me some, so I'll speak up. I'm sorry, guys. I am on the road coming back from visiting my father. Y'all pray for him as he recovers from being sick. Just got out of the hospital, and if y'all can keep my family in your prayers, I appreciate that. But thank you for inviting me to this conversation. I've been listening in, and amazing, guys. I want to say thank you for touching subjects that other people don't want to touch. And just to kind of overview, just real quick, the way this ties together, it's templates. It's the same players: the CIA, the Kennedy assassination, the J6 situation, the Whitmer, Oklahoma City 9/11, Pearl Harbor. If you want to go so far, you can. And when you understand how these tie together, January 6th, we're still waiting on Trump to get the last of our hostages back home. They're still not free. They're still in prison around the country in different locations being moved with their diesel therapy program. And we're really upset that, the judges are not adhering to the presidential order. And I think the most important thing, when you think about the three branches of government, the one that needs the most repair is the judicial. And we have an opportunity right now to really take these federal judges to the mat and give Trump the opportunity to replace all of these federal judges that were involved in the January 6th. And then if Pam Bondi can fire these bad AUSAs and get that under control, we can own the judicial branch again. We can have lifetime appointments and decades of fair and just justice, not this criminalized, weaponized DOJ that we've seen for so long. And I think when people understand it's the same players, it's really important what y'all are talking about, to tie these threads together and really explain that long game, that big lens, like you said, Andrew. And man, y'all are doing a fantastic job. Thanks for inviting me.
David, how many J6ers are still currently locked up?
So I'd have to count about a dozen, real close. Several at DC, a couple in Kentucky. They're spread out a little bit. They've been moving them around. Marshals are actually working with the judges, guys. When you understand that you don't have to do what they say if it's unlawful, correct? You can protect. The marshals are supposed to protect us and help us and serve us, and they're helping torture us. They're helping these judges by moving these guys around, put them in a van, take them somewhere else. Why? Because the judges, Kelly, Nichols, won't sign off on these releases for these people. And now they're trying to keep Oath Keepers and Proud Boys on probation for what they were commuted. There's no point. And we have one guy in California in prison has self-surrendered 2 days ago. We got 3 other girls that they're calling on the phone saying, you need to come self-surrender next week. So when does it end? And why are they releasing these with the option to come back and add more charges or retry cases? This is not what we, the people, have the power. That's not what we want. And President Trump needs to understand, before he can start this golden era, you have to finish this job. This is the one thing, guys, that I really feel that he's missed, is how pivotal the J6 experience was for the country. I think it's the biggest event in our history, period, hands down, because as they try to compare it to Pearl Harbor or 9/11, why? We knew about those, or we were in on those, because this is the biggest thing.
That's an interesting
and we
point.
did it all. We did it all by ourselves. We didn't have to have any foreign power interference or help. We did this to our own people, tortured, murdered, hands down, our own Tiananmen Square. So when you consider that, and then how the justice system was weaponized solely because we supported the America First principles, we thought the election was fraudulent. And what's the first thing that happened in 2024 when we elected Trump? the first thing they said was, well, what about 2020? We're about to go fix that.
Yeah.
We're nullify Biden's pardons. And listen, if these pardons aren't good for innocent people, they shouldn't be good for guilty people. Go get Hunter, go get the select committee, go get the Capitol Police that testified against us all and lied, because we have it. But we also have all the judge statements. We have all the evidence of their bias, their prejudice, and we're going to hold them to it. And we're going to make sure that they get the punishment that they deserve legally within the bounds of the law. And we're going to make it very public, because you can't do that. It's being unprecedented. Yes, this has never happened to American citizens before, and it can never happen again.
David, why are they moving the prisoner? Okay, so you say there's a dozen or several dozen that are still locked up. One of those that's still locked up is Tina Peters, where my understanding is they're using federal marshals, possibly in her case. David, why? So you're stating that the judges are deliberately not releasing these prisoners. Some reports state it's because there are injuries on the prisoners. I have one man named Brian Smith who was beaten inside the in the jails. I'm going to be talking to him in a day or two about this, but he'd be attacked by the guards, and of course, if you were to fight back, they lay on more charges, and now you just perpetually don't get out. But if they were not expecting these pardons to come, are these people in injured physical states where part of the strategy is to move them around until you have some healing to them, because you don't want them examined in public?
Yes and no. There are not as many medical issues with the people that are leftovers. Some of them are different charges. Some of them are more serious. Jeremy Brown is the one that exposed the feds for trying to recruit him to be one of the players in January 6th, basically, and planted evidence on him. So the difference with these people mainly is that they're state charges instead of federal charges, which the pardon wouldn't cover. Our argument is that these charges came as a result of the J6 raid, which, fruit of the poisonous tree, if they would have never raided for J6, they never would have found whatever they found. Or if there wasn't a court proceeding that they missed, or a date in court or something that was added as an extra punishment, that's what they're serving. Or now we're hearing from the prisoners, breaking news, that if you were in prison and you got pardoned, then it counts. But if you had been sentenced but hadn't served your sentence yet, then you still have to report and serve your entire sentence. I don't think that these are the orders that our president gave. And I don't think that the public, when they learn about this, should sit in their chairs on their hands and watch. I think they should get involved and understand this is our opportunity to make some real change, some real difference. And this is that topic, the come together moment. Here's the other part, guys. These prisoners are coming out and they're saying, we have seen so much crime and corruption in this prison system. We can't let these other people that have been overcharged, non-J6ers that have been overcharged and suffered in this environment. It's inhumane and cruel punishment. The solitary confinement, the food, the conditions, the gouging of prices with commissary and communications, and everything that happens is a racket. And you can't put good, honest people in that environment that don't belong there, that aren't going to stay there, and not expect them to come out and want to fix it. And now the BOP, we've been in 80 different facilities around the federal facilities around the country and others around the country. And we're going to do something about that. These people will not rest until they get justice in every way. And their treatment was a major part of the process, is the punishment, whether it's the marshals and diesel therapy, whether it's the deprivation, the food, the maggots, the chemicals, the urine, the feces, all these things. They've kept long lists, and they are ready to turn the script and do a little payback. I think it's overdue, and I think this is that example time, guys. Examples have to be made so that we don't repeat these things. These long career criminals have to be put in their proper place, maybe in prison while we're waiting for the rest. But I think it's a great place to start. And my perspective, guys, listen, if J6 was the biggest investigation ever, then this deserves the biggest investigation of the. So we need to put these people in 4 years in prison while we search for evidence, while we do discovery, because we're really going to have to investigate. So all of the people involved need to go straight to jail because they're obviously a danger to society. And then we'll figure this out over the next 4, maybe 8 years. But that's what they deserve for what they did to us. And then these J6ers need to be somehow tried to restore them because of what they've suffered through. You can't do this to good, honest people and just walk away scot-free. The government did this. They have to pay for it. And I want it to come out of the pockets of the people that did it, not the taxpayer, although the taxpayer can stand to pay their part for not helping, not listening, and letting these people be tortured for 4 years. If they feel a little pain, that's okay with me too. Maybe it'll wake them up. But this is what we've been through, and it is something that Trump needs to realize. He didn't get himself elected. He's not that popular. Yeah, he's a great guy. But our topic was critical. And when he said, they shot me in the ear and they tried to, put me in prison. Well, they murdered us. We killed ourselves. We suffered in prisons for 4 years. You can mention us against the better advice of your advisors and circle. If you felt like saying something about us, say it. Don't let other people influence you. It was that important to you. It was that important to us. But someone got in the way of the communications and you didn't finish what you wanted to say until after. Oh, well, after isn't quite the same as the people sitting in prison during that moment waiting for you to say, you will be out by midnight. No, he kind of gaslit everybody. And he left all of our volunteers spread out around the country, waiting indefinitely in the freezing cold because we didn't know if they were going to get out that day or not. Some did by midnight, some didn't. Some 3 o'clock in the morning, some the next day, some the next day. We can't afford all this. We're already spent all these legal fees fighting this fight for Trump in the courts. So a little recognition, a little compensation, a little bring them back to where we're. Guys, look, man, if he could have had a black limousine sitting out of every prison waiting for every prisoner with a private jet to fly him home, whatever he wanted to do, he could have done. They deserve a hero's welcome. They saved the Constitution. They saved America. I truly believe that that's the way it'll be looked back, like the Boston Tea Party on steroids, when these awesome Americans went and stood and died. That old saying about the only people that die for your freedom are Jesus and the American soldier. You can add J6ers to that list. You can add them right now. Yeah.
David, let me just interject something here real quick because I've seen what the talking points from our own senators, our own House representatives on X are saying things like, and this is the talking point that is going around that we need to correct. The talking point is that Trump released 1,500 murdering cop killers, and they use Brian Sicknick as the example. Correct for everybody what happened with Brian Sicknick.
So at around 3 or 4 o'clock, the first J6 protester took Officer Sicknick to the police line and said, this man is having some kind of medical emergency. Can you help him? And they said, yes. It wasn't the chaotic battle scene everywhere that people told. The next time, and I guess that was after Tucker Carlson's flag.
And there was video evidence of this.
Yes.
Video evidence of this.
The second J6 witness was later that evening. He had been arrested, detained by the police. He was an ex-combat medic. He heard someone call Officer Sicknick by his name, and he said, hey, what did you say? I know that name. His family, my family, we all served in the military together. He's from my neck of the woods. I'm a medic. Let me treat him. He's having a stroke, man. His face is white. His lips are purple or blue or whatever. Let me treat him. They said, we have our own medic coming. We're going to treat him. This had already been 4 hours since the first guy took him to the cops. 4 hours later, this next witness, they told him, mind your own business. Get back in line. He said, just uncuff me. Let me treat him until your guy gets here. Mind your own business. At 10 o'clock, Sicknick collapsed. When the medics got to him, they said that nobody knew why he had collapsed. Nobody knew why he had collapsed. Means there's no big head wound or blood. Nobody knew.
David, what was
Yeah,
the media's original story on that?
that we bashed his head in with a fire extinguisher. I'll get to that, but they
Yeah.
said there was no evidence of why he's collapsed, but they were doing CPR on him, but he was not dead. So his stroke that he had suffered from all day, they forced him to suffer through that. They never gave him stroke medicine. So he finally collapsed. The media hit the press that we bashed his head in with a fire extinguisher. And he died the next evening of the stroke. The coroner, the medical examiner, everybody, it was unrelated, no physical injury inside or out, no chemical irritants, that he died of natural causes, 2 strokes actually, or 2 blood clots, whatever it was. And they said it was unfortunate timing of events, and unfortunate nothing. The cops never gave him the medical treatment. He had an emergency. They never took him to medics. They told him, sit down here, have some water. You're just sore sick, Nick, because your Trump buddies that you voted with are getting their butts handed to them, is my opinion. I think they were mean and cruel. Anyway, that's beside the point. The medical examiner said
So
that
one
he
of the
died of
people
a
that they
stroke.
had in custody tried to treat Officer Sicknick, and they refused that.
Chris
And
Alberts.
is what you're stating, and then he
Chris
actually
Alberts.
died of a stroke.
The next evening, about 24 hours later, the media put a story out that he had died, but he hadn't died yet. So they retracted the story. We still have it. And then an hour later, when they finally pronounced him, they released the story. The family lived not too far away and never in 24 hours had an opportunity to see his body, question mark. And then he was cremated and laid in state and used as bait. And they came by and mourned him for 3 days. Oh, this is the officer that those people murdered. It was a total lie the whole time. Then they buried him at Arlington National Cemetery. His parents have had their lawyer call me and say, quit talking about him. And I'm like, no, you have to know the truth. And I want you to know the truth about him. He's our hero because the deep state tried to use him to cover their lies, to cover their theft, to cover their crimes. And that's not right. And they deserve to know what actually happened. Everybody's been duped. And here's the thing, man, it hurts really bad to get duped. Nobody likes getting tricked, and it's hard to admit that sometimes. But there's those people that will never admit it, that don't care, that we're really having the hardest time with, and half of those are our politicians. They keep calling us criminals. Let me touch on that
Mhm.
1,600 violent
Well,
criminals
one
being,
second before you go further
yeah.
with that, Dave. Okay, so people should know that you're one of the so you've been one of Tucker Carlson's experts on the J6 timeline of events, and so this isn't just out of the cuff. You studied this from the very onset of it.
Well, I've testified in 10 trials myself. I've worked with hundreds of defendants on hundreds of cases with dozens of lawyers. I've worked with Congress and Senate. Most of the major production J6 videos have either our videos or our analysis and expert. I work with these guys as they build the films and give them Lara Logan, Tucker Carlson, all these. So it's, yes, we're extra. I've spent over 10,000 hours digging through these videos. I work with the lawyers. So I have access to the database, and I've been able to look through these videos for 4 years and compare. And the J6ers have never lied about what they experienced. So think about this. The FBI never charged any J6er with lying about what they experienced on January 6th. Think about that. Out of 1,600 people, they could have just charged them with lying and put them in jail for a couple of years. But they didn't. Nobody's been charged with lying because we never lied.
Interesting.
We told the truth the whole time. And now that we're vindicated, the world needs to figure it out. Are they going to release all that video now that it's over? No, because it will still show the crimes of the police and the Metro PD and the Capitol Police and the instigators and the agents that were, all that is still real. And that's what people need to remember. Trump didn't do us a favor. You know what I'm saying? He did. He saved us. He gave us a pardon and all that, but he didn't even get that part right. We need a pardon of innocence or a pardon of mercy along with that commutation if needed. He could have done this a little bit different on the verbiage that would have protected us from the things that we're going through now or that we could possibly go through We did the same pardon of innocence program for General Flynn. That's really what we petitioned Trump for. And now people are saying we may not take this pardon because we want to keep fighting in the appellate court. And the appellate court is mad at the judges because they're saying, oh, no, don't put this back on us. Y'all did this. We're not going to take this to the appellate court. They will eat us all alive. You better do something. And so that's kind of where they are. We've got them over a barrel in a really good way. And if we can get these talking points basically out to people and let them know how they can help and what's really going on, that not everybody's home yet. Don't declare victory, President Trump, until the job is finished. Job one, rule number one. So let's keep that in mind, and y'all keep praying for these people and their families. It's torture 100%, and at least the people that are left are super strong. And we talked to them. We had a chaplain in with one today. We're communicating with them best we can and trying to keep their spirits up. But man, they need some relief.
So there's a man named Brian Smith, who of the J6ers. I know this man personally, and talked to him. Well, I met him I met him at one of the Trump events, and he came up and he told me about his story and what had happened. And one of the talking points that I have heard from many of the political figures, and I'm actually proud of a lot of the things Trump has done. So on day one, most people, Dave, I would just like to state this, did not imagine, myself included, that he'd, I mean, this is a list of stuff.
Yeah.
And this man, Brian Smith, he sent me pictures of himself leaving the, I forgot what prison he was in, but he was in there for 10 months. And some of this, and I haven't heard his entire story, this was pretty grisly, quite a bit of it, particularly at the DC jail. And but the treatment of these different judges. Now, in his case, they would have these different phrasings, and I don't want to get too caught up in it because, so they'd use sort of the word intent to assault or attempted assault or involved later with an assault or he thought about assault. And so you'd hear these political figures stating, well, if it was involved in assault, well, what does that mean? Because they would toss this word assault around quite a bit, at least in this one man's particular case. So when I was listening to that lingo, and I began to think to myself, okay, so if the underlying courts themselves are tainted and biased, that alone, even if an officer was hurt, God forbid, which, it's really the court system itself that's actually let people down in that situation. How can you prosecute anything? I mean, this is the grandest of the indictments, is that you're going through, you're told on the media that here's these people that are attacking the Capitol, and you're finding this man walking through with Capitol Police in the the QAnon shamans case.
Yeah.
And of course his footage wasn't released until way later, and then it came forth on Tucker Carlson. And anyhow, Dave, I just thank you for the work that you've done in following these people. Go ahead.
Let me try to straighten that out for people, and I think this is part of the education process that we desperately need about J6. First, the nonviolent versus violent argument, that was, I believe, an attempt by J.D. Vance and Pam Bondi to explain the reasoning for the pardoning. Now, you got to understand, like, an assault charge has like 5 different levels. If you stand in front of a cop, or if you yelled at a cop, or if you blocked him, or if you pushed him.
Yeah, there could be a verbal assault.
Absolutely. Or you could have asked for help, and that is considered impeding an officer. If you asked for help, in this case, I've never heard of that before, J6, but in this case, if you asked for help, that was impeding an officer as well. So they had all these different levels and charges. But
were there examples of that, Dave? Were there actual examples of that?
Yes. Absolutely. Pam Hemphill, the old MAGA granny that everybody doesn't like now because she turned on Trump, she is one of the ones that asked the officer if they could help her out. She wanted to leave, and they walked her down the hall to the door, and then they charged her with impeding an officer because he could have been over doing something else.
Which was an assault? which
Well,
was
no, just
counted as an assault.
impeding or
Impeding, which is the equivalent.
obstruction.
See, it sounds bad. See, you've
Yes,
impeded, right?
yes,
You
yes.
stood in their way.
That's right. So the 111A's are the non-violent charges. The 111B was the assault type, so it was easy enough to say none of the 111A's were going to be in trouble. It was only the 111B's, and out of 1,600 cases, there's only like 89. Out of all those things, there were only 89 people that were charged with any kind of real violence that even could have been real violence. And then you had to go through and see if it's a water bottle or a flagpole, or water bottle or a flagpole, because literally that's the way they did it. So when you get to court, they're able to, if you can articulate an argument, well, he threw a water bottle in the direction of a policeman and it could have hit him in the temple and killed him, then you can take him to court and charge him for that. The 1512 was a prime example of using lawfare and a 20-year charge to get over 800 pleas from people that would settle for misdemeanors instead of going to prison for 20 years for obstruction of justice, which we found out later was totally unusable for what they were doing. So when you see the Justice Department being weaponized like that, and you see a systematic, and you see the same people, and then you see these opportunities like y'all are talking about for some real change, we really need to lean in and not just be bystanders. It's all about taking action and saying yes. And I just encourage you all to give that a whirl.
David, you got a new film coming out soon, don't you?
We do, man. I'm so excited. It's called Pardon Us, Justice for All. And I believe that it will be the explanation of what we experienced in the lawfare and the weaponization of the DOJ, the judges, the prosecutors, to really explain to regular people what just happened. Why did they get a pardon? What was the necessity? What was really going on in DC? Because nobody knew what was happening in those courts because they cut it off. Used to, you could zoom in, then you could call in, and then for the last couple of years, you've got to go there, and nobody did but us, and nobody brought those stories out. So this will explain the lawfare that has been used against innocent American citizens, and I hope people will really take away from it that it's the reason that these people stood. They understood the importance of what they were doing. They could have bent the knee and gone home anytime, but they had to stand and fight, and literally to save America. I'm just so proud of all of them.
Trey, I've got a trailer. Would you like to see it?
Yes, let's play it. And thank you for all the work that you've done, David.
You're absolutely welcome, Trey. Thank you for having me, bro.
I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard.
They literally hunted down protesters that may have been guilty of misdemeanors.
Well, the left wrote the playbook on political violence.
They used this malicious prosecution and extortion tactics. That's what terrorism is.
The law enforcement response to the rioters at the Capitol yesterday is being criticized as a double standard.
22 years in federal prison.
These judges abuse their benches. They weaponize the power of their decisions politically.
And everybody on that committee, honestly, they should go to jail.
So the real terrorists in this equation are the FBI, the DOJ, and the judges who allowed this.
That's awesome, David. Well, I want to thank you for tuning in tonight. And following this presentation, there will be a full-length presentation on the FBI prophecy that was given by Pastor Andre in San Antonio and Dallas, Texas, covering John F. Kennedy as well as the Alamo. This will be the full-length version with unedited footage from that prophecy. So, which I found very telling even today while I was going through and editing it together. I want to thank you for tuning in. Thank you for your time, David, tonight, and talking about J6 and all of the work that you put into that. You were actually one of the very last shows, maybe even the very last show that Tucker Carlson had done before being pulled off of the air on Fox News, which might speak some to the gravity of how serious a lot of this was, and getting that messaging across, whether these people were grandmothers asking for help that needed a misdemeanor to a felony, or people like Brian Smith, who was an ex-helicopter pilot with classified clearances, who lost all of that, David. So, and I know what you're talking about when you say, well, actually, I don't know what that would feel like to say. I mean, you can't give that back to somebody. You really can't.
Trey, listen,
What
man,
you've taken there.
what was that founding fathers thing about their fortune and their good name and their lives? You know, these people are founding fathers material in my book, bro, because they gave everything. Some gave their lives. Their families were destroyed. They lost their homes. They sacrificed for this country and need to really just be appreciated for it. So I appreciate you spreading the light on that subject for people and helping educate them to the reality of January 6th, man. God bless you for that.
Thank you very
too,
much
Andrew.
for that, David.
Absolutely. Thank you. Y'all have
Andrew,
a super
thank
night,
you for
guys.
taking, yes, and Andrew, thank you for taking your time tonight to do this live stream with me. And
Anytime, bro. We
and
got more to talk about. There's a lot more to going on, and I think we can do this again soon. Don't you think?
absolutely. Thank all of you for spending time with us this evening on this Friday evening. This is actually the beginning of a very golden age. It's actually quite unexpected. A lot of people, even a lot of prophets, that were probably thinking in a lot of emotion as well and fear. And by the way, if you rewound to Trump's first term, and let me just close out with this, because when Trump's first term came, there were a lot of people that were terrified, believing it's time for America to end now. And there's a lot of heavy things that are still coming. They have to. They have to. You've actually been at war this entire time. But the good news is, for Dave, for Andrew, for myself, and for all of you that are watching, is that the Lord has not just placed this man, Donald Trump, but each and every one of us. I mean, Dave is just a common guy. Andrew, myself, we're people that felt motivated to do different things. And I really pray that the Lord just moves on your spirit. Over the holidays, over this Christmas, there were a lot of prophetic words that reminded me of back at that time. And pardon my voice for going out a little bit tonight, and thank you for bearing with that. It took a bit to put together this video that I'll be releasing after this live stream goes down, and quite a few other things. They're pre-flood labs where people have put together, not people, people whose names that many of you don't even know, people whose names that I didn't know, that have done creation work literally over decades, even going back to the time of Kent Hovind, when they would throw people in jail to shut them up. So these things like Dave's talking about with January 6th, this is the close of eras of these type of things. They've been doing this and worse for a long time to people, tearing their lives apart. If that doesn't work, they will end up dead. And in the field of medicine, type in. So today, Fauci is talking about a golden age of Trump coming. Fauci, who's a name that all of us know is dirty. We may not even know all the reasons why, but we took one look at him for a couple of years and we figured out this guy is dirty. Type in the name Gary Davis. He's a black doctor, Dr. Gary Davis. You'll find censored to the hilt on many of you're going to find a lot of things on cancer cures, but you'll find a lot of things on AIDS cures. And one of them is this black doctor out of Kansas City that believed that the Lord had given him a vision for how to cure AIDS. The Food and Drug Administration would not give him approval in the United States to even test this, but he did it anyway. And he found out that it worked. Then he went out to Africa. I can't remember which country, but a CNN reporter, back when they used to do reporting, whose brother had died from AIDS, went out there to go investigate this, thinking it's probably hocus pocus. Took his cameras. A man like Andrew Molinex has got a bunch of cameras with him, goes out there and they're giving these people shots, and they come in on stretchers and they're walking out. AIDS affects your immune system, so they're dying from all these other causes. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of cases of this. Comes back to the United States. And this was back in Fox News did a little clip on this. I bet you'll have trouble finding it. Dr. Gary Davis. But you'll type his name in. He never made his flight home. And at the end of that Fox News clip, the last voice you'll hear is Dr. Fauci stating that we investigated his cure and we've determined not only will it not work, but it could be dangerous for you. Does that sound familiar?
Yep.
And this was for an AIDS cure. Now, when we fast forward to, yes, this has been going on. This kind of stuff has been going on for a very long time. And so this has always been where it's led. And that's why it's symbolic, these JFK files, I believe, to a lot of people. And there are things that even these men on this show can't share, that I can't share, but I think there's something very, very symbolic to a lot of these people about this man, JFK.
That should be the next show.
And for something, well, it's next video coming out. Well, there's the video, literally when this live stream stops, part of those prophecies coming up. But whatever is in those files, Andrew,
that was another one of the executive orders that came this week. Just point that out.
Yes, it was. And more than that, let's look at South Africa just real quick. There are prophecies that go all the way back to a man named Van Seer from South Africa. And I will tell you that this activity of what we all call the deep state, the governments of the world will act in cahoots against their own people, no matter what color that they are. And they'll use terms such as racism and the sort. But there's a rising up in all of the nations against this. And what I saw today, and normally these lines out in places like South Africa, people don't really understand because you're not from there. Here's where I'm going with this, is that there's a deliverance coming to country after country after country, and that there are chains that are breaking. And that's actually visibly what's occurring. And the JFK files being released are symbolic of that. I'm Trey Smith of God in a Nutshell. God bless every last one of you and your families on the other side of the screen.
Trey, can I end with a scripture real quick?
Let's end with the scripture.
So I feel like this is the most relevant scripture right now, and it's James 5:16. The effectual fervent prayer of a righteous man availeth much. And then I want to do one quote because I was at Jefferson Memorial on Tuesday, and it is one of my favorite founding father quotes. I have sworn upon the altar of God eternal hostility against every form of tyranny over the mind of man. I think that's where we are.
You were for the viewers, Andrew was at the Capitol on 2 occasions over the last couple of weeks. One was at the inauguration. And what were those 2 occasions, Andrew?
The inauguration was one, and the other was I was with David Sumrall, Trennis Evans, Daniel Goodwin, Adam Riva of Dauntless Dialogues. We were filming Pardon Us.
Awesome, brothers. Okay, well, have a very good night, and God bless all of you, and thank you for watching.
God bless you guys.